The clock on the wall showed 2:15 a.m., and the emergency department at Valley Medical Center was finally quiet after a busy evening. Lily Chen had been working as a nurse for just 8 months, but she already knew that these peaceful moments were rare and precious. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, casting their familiar harsh glow across the empty hallways. Lily adjusted her stethoscope around her neck and started her routine rounds. At 24, she was still the newest member of the night shift team, which meant she often got the tasks that others preferred to avoid. Tonight was no different. She had already cleaned up 3 rooms, restocked medical supplies, and helped discharge an elderly woman who had waited 6 hours for test results. As she walked past the main waiting area, something caught her eye. In the far corner near the vending machines, an old man was curled up on one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs. His thin body was twisted awkwardly as he tried to find a comfortable position to sleep. The sight made Lily pause. The hospital's heating system had been acting up for the past week. During the day, it wasn't too noticeable because of all the people and activity. But at night, when the building emptied out, the waiting areas became surprisingly cold. Lily had noticed it herself during her breaks, often needing to grab an extra sweater from her locker. She looked more closely at the sleeping man. He appeared to be in his 70s, with silver hair that needed a trim and deep lines around his eyes. His clothes were simple and worn: a faded blue sweater with a small hole near the elbow, dark pants that had seen better days, and old sneakers that were coming apart at the seams. He had no jacket, no blanket, nothing to keep him warm. Lily glanced around the waiting area. It was completely empty except for this one person. She wondered why he was here so late. Was he waiting for news about a family member? Was he homeless and just looking for a warm place to sleep? The hospital security usually didn't allow people to stay overnight unless they were patients or had someone admitted. She watched as the man shivered slightly in his sleep, pulling his arms tighter around himself. The sight tugged at her heart. She had seen plenty of people in difficult situations during her short time as a nurse, but something about this particular moment felt different. Without really thinking about it, Lily started walking toward him. Her footsteps were soft on the linoleum floor, careful not to wake him. As she got closer, she could see that his face looked peaceful despite the uncomfortable position. There was something gentle about his features, even in sleep. The man shivered again, and Lily made up her mind. She looked down at her own thick cardigan, a warm navy blue one that her grandmother had knitted for her when she started nursing school. It was one of her favorite pieces of clothing, not just because it was comfortable, but because it reminded her of home and family. She carefully removed the cardigan, feeling the immediate chill of the air conditioning on her arms. Underneath, she wore only a thin scrub top, but she had been moving around all night and felt warm enough. The man needed it more than she did. Moving slowly and quietly, Lily approached the sleeping figure. She gently draped her cardigan over his shoulders and torso, making sure it covered as much of him as possible. The man stirred slightly but didn't wake up. His breathing seemed to become more relaxed almost immediately. For a moment, Lily just stood there looking at him. She wondered what his story was. Did he have family nearby? Was someone taking care of him? The questions floated through her mind, but she knew she might never get the answers. "Lily," a voice called from down the hall, startling her from her thoughts. It was Tom, one of the senior nurses on duty. "We need you in room 4. Heart attack coming in by ambulance." "Coming," she whispered back, taking one last look at the sleeping man. He looked more comfortable now, and that made her feel good. She hurried toward the emergency bay, her mind already shifting to the urgent medical situation ahead. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The heart attack patient required immediate attention, and then there was a car accident victim, followed by a young mother whose baby had a high fever. By the time things calmed down again, it was nearly 6 a.m., and Lily had completely forgotten about her cardigan. During her break, she walked past the waiting area again, but the man was gone. The chairs where he had been sleeping were empty, and there was no sign that anyone had been there at all. Lily looked around, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, but he had vanished. She felt a small pang of disappointment. She had hoped to check on him, maybe even talk to him and find out if he was okay. More practically, she also wondered what had happened to her cardigan. It wasn't that she was upset about losing it. She genuinely didn't mind, but she was curious. As she walked back to the nurse's station, Lily ran into Janet, the security guard who worked the night shift. "Hey, Janet," Lily said. "Did you see an older man leave the waiting area earlier?" "He was sleeping there around 2 o'clock. Janet nodded. "Yeah, I saw him. Nice old guy. He left around 4:30, I think. Asked me to make sure this got to the nurse who helped him." She reached into her pocket and pulled out Lily's cardigan, now neatly folded. "He said to tell you thank you," Janet continued. Seemed really grateful. Said it was the kindest thing anyone had done for him in a long time. Lily took her cardigan, feeling its familiar softness. It smelled faintly of coffee and something else she couldn't identify. Maybe aftershave or soap. She smiled, feeling a warm sensation in her chest that had nothing to do with getting her sweater back. "Did he say anything else?" she asked. "Just that he wouldn't forget the kindness," Janet replied. "You did a good thing, kid. Not everyone would have thought to do that." As Lily headed to the locker room to change out of her scrubs, she reflected on the night. In the grand scheme of things, giving someone your cardigan wasn't a big deal. It was a small gesture, really. But sometimes small gestures mattered the most. She thought about why she had become a nurse in the first place. It wasn't for the money, that was certain. Hospital work was demanding, the hours were difficult, and the pay was modest. She had chosen nursing because she wanted to help people, to make a difference in their lives, even if only in small ways. Tonight had reminded her of that purpose. Somewhere in the city there was an old man who had slept a little warmer because of her simple act of kindness. That felt good. It felt right. Little did Lily know that this small moment of compassion would soon change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The weeks following that cold night in the emergency waiting room seemed to blur together for Lily. Her shift schedule remained demanding. 3 12-hour nights per week, plus occasional overtime when the hospital was short-staffed. But something had changed in her approach to the work. That simple moment of giving her cardigan to a stranger had reminded her why she loved being a nurse, even when everything else felt overwhelming. On a particularly busy Thursday night, Lily was assigned to the pediatric wing. A 6-year-old girl named Maya had been brought in with a severe asthma attack. After the doctors stabilized her condition, Maya's parents finally arrived, both looking frantic and exhausted. Lily could see immediately that they were stressed about more than just their daughter's health. "The babysitter for our other kids fell through," the mother whispered to her husband, "and I already missed 2 days of work this week." Lily overheard the conversation and quietly approached them. "I get off my shift at 7 in the morning," she said softly. "If you need to go home to check on your other children, I can stay with Maya for an extra hour or two until you get back. She shouldn't be alone, and I don't mind." The parents looked at each other with relief. "We can't ask you to do that," the father said. "You must be tired after working all night." "It's really okay," Lily insisted. "Maya's been asking for someone to read to her anyway. I brought a book from home." She ended up staying until 9 that morning, reading stories and playing quiet games with Maya until her parents returned. When they tried to pay her for the extra time, she politely refused. "Just take care of each other," she said. "That's payment enough." This wasn't an unusual occurrence for Lily. The previous week, she had noticed that Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly woman with diabetes, hadn't eaten anything from the hospital cafeteria in 2 days. When Lily gently asked about it, Mrs. Rodriguez admitted she couldn't afford the food prices and was too proud to ask her family for money. The next day, Lily brought homemade sandwiches and fruit from her own kitchen. She told Mrs. Rodriguez that the hospital had started a new program, providing meals for patients with dietary restrictions. It wasn't exactly true, but it allowed the older woman to accept the food without feeling like charity. Lily's colleagues started to notice these small acts of kindness. During a brief break one night, her supervisor, Karen, pulled her aside. "I've been getting a lot of positive feedback about you from patients and families," Karen said. "The Hendersons specifically asked for you when their son was readmitted last week. That's unusual for someone who's only been here 8 months. Lily felt a flush of pride, but also some embarrassment. "I'm just doing my job," she said. "No," Karen replied, shaking her head. "You're doing more than that. I've seen a lot of nurses come and go, and there's something different about the way you connect with people. Don't lose that." But even as her reputation for compassion grew, Lily struggled with the practical realities of her job. The hospital was chronically understaffed, which meant nurses were often responsible for more patients than they could properly care for. Some nights she barely had time to eat during her 12-hour shift, let alone provide the extra attention she wanted to give each person. Her student loan payments were also a constant source of stress. Nursing school had been expensive, and her starting salary at the hospital, while decent, barely covered her basic expenses after the loan payments. She shared a small apartment with 2 roommates, drove a 10-year-old car that needed frequent repairs, and had learned to stretch her grocery budget as far as possible. Sometimes, lying in bed after a long shift, Lily wondered if she was making any real difference. The healthcare system felt so big and broken at times. Patients waited hours for basic care. Insurance companies denied treatments that doctors recommended. Families went into debt trying to pay medical bills. What could one nurse with a kind heart really accomplish in the face of all that? One particular night really tested her resolve. She was assigned to care for Mr. Patterson, a homeless veteran who had been brought in with pneumonia. He was difficult and angry, yelling at anyone who tried to help him. Other staff members avoided his room when possible. Lily spent her breaks sitting with him, not saying much, just being present. Gradually, she learned that he had lost his job 6 months earlier and had been living in his car until it was repossessed. He was embarrassed and frustrated, lashing out because he felt helpless. "Nobody sees me anymore," he told her during one of their quiet conversations. "I used to be somebody. I had a house, a family, a career. Now I'm just another problem for people to deal with." Lily listened without judgment, bringing him extra blankets and making sure he had clean clothes when he was discharged. She also gave him information about local veteran services and wrote down her name and the hospital's number in case he needed help finding resources. 2 weeks later, Mr. Patterson showed up at the hospital during Lily's shift. He looked different, cleaner, more hopeful. He had found temporary housing through one of the programs she had recommended and wanted to thank her. "You were the first person in months who treated me like I was human," he said. "That mattered more than you know." Moments like these reminded Lily why she had chosen nursing, but they were balanced by countless frustrations. Budget constraints meant that basic supplies were sometimes limited. The hospital's administration seemed more focused on profits than patient care. And the workload kept increasing as healthcare costs rose and staff positions were left unfilled. During one particularly difficult week, Lily had to care for 12 patients during a single shift when 2 other nurses called in sick. She barely had time to check vital signs, let alone provide the personal attention she believed each patient deserved. She went home that morning feeling like she had failed everyone. Her roommate Jessica found her crying at the kitchen table over a bowl of cereal. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this," Lily said. "I want to help people, but the system makes it so hard to actually do the job right." "Are you kidding me?" Jessica replied. "You come home every day with stories about people whose lives you've touched. Mrs. Chen still sends you thank you cards for helping her during her surgery. That little boy, Danny, asks his mom to call and check on Nurse Lily whenever he gets scared about his treatments." Jessica was right. Despite the systemic problems, despite the long hours and modest pay, Lily continued to find ways to make a difference. She organized a small fundraiser among the staff to help a family whose insurance wouldn't cover their child's medical equipment. She started keeping a supply of phone chargers at the nurses' station because she noticed how many patients' families had dead phones and no way to communicate with relatives. These weren't grand gestures that would make headlines or change hospital policy. They were small human moments of connection and care. A hand held during a scary procedure. A listening ear when someone needed to talk about their fears. A warm smile at 3 in the morning when pain kept sleep away. But Lily still wondered sometimes if it was enough. She was just one person in a vast, complicated system. Could small acts of kindness really matter in the bigger picture? She had no way of knowing that one of those acts, giving her cardigan to a cold stranger, would soon answer that question in a way she never could have imagined. 3 months after the night with the elderly man in the waiting room, Valley Medical Center faced its worst financial crisis in years. The rumors started quietly at first, whispered conversations in break rooms, and worried glances between senior staff members. But by early spring, everyone knew the truth. The hospital was in serious trouble. The first signs were small but noticeable. The coffee in the staff lounge switched to a cheaper brand. Overtime hours were cut back dramatically. The hospital stopped ordering some of the medical supplies that nurses had grown accustomed to having available. Then came the bigger changes. Lily arrived for her shift one Tuesday evening to find a notice posted on the staff bulletin board. The hospital administration announced that due to economic challenges and reduced patient revenues, they would need to implement cost-cutting measures. The language was formal and corporate, but everyone understood what it really meant. Layoffs were coming. "They always start with the newest nurses," said Patricia, who had worked at Valley Medical for 15 years. She was restocking medicine cabinets with Lily during the night shift. "I've seen it happen 3 times before. The last hired are always the first to go." Lily felt a knot form in her stomach. She had been at the hospital for less than a year. If Patricia was right, her job was definitely at risk. "But what about patient care?" Lily asked. "We're already short-staffed on most nights. How can they cut more positions?" Patricia shrugged sadly. "They'll make the remaining nurses handle more patients. It's not right, but that's how these things work. The administrators sit in their offices looking at spreadsheets, not thinking about real people." Over the following weeks, the atmosphere at the hospital became increasingly tense. Employees who had worked together for years started viewing each other as competition. Some of the newer nurses, including Lily, began working extra shifts whenever possible, hoping that showing dedication might save their jobs. But the extra work came at a cost. Lily found herself exhausted constantly, running on coffee and determination. Her small acts of kindness, the extra time spent with patients, the homemade meals for families, the late-night conversations with scared people, became harder to maintain when she was responsible for even more patients during each shift. One particularly difficult night, Lily was assigned to care for 16 patients, nearly double her usual load. Mrs. Thompson, a woman recovering from hip surgery, needed help getting to the bathroom every few hours. Mr. Davis, a diabetic patient, required frequent blood sugar monitoring. The Johnson family was spending the night in the room with their newborn baby, and the new mother had endless questions about breastfeeding and infant care. Lily did her best, but she could feel herself falling behind. When Mrs. Thompson's call button went off, Lily was in the middle of administering medication to another patient and couldn't respond immediately. By the time she arrived, Mrs. Thompson had tried to get up on her own and had fallen, though fortunately without serious injury. "I'm so sorry," Lily said, helping the elderly woman back into bed. "I came as quickly as I could." "It's not your fault, dear," Mrs. Thompson replied kindly. "I can see how busy you are tonight. There just aren't enough of you to go around." That comment stayed with Lily for the rest of her shift. Mrs. Thompson was right. There weren't enough nurses to provide proper care to everyone who needed it. And if the rumored layoffs happened, the situation would only get worse. The uncertainty was affecting all aspects of Lily's life. She lay awake during the day, when she should have been sleeping, worrying about her future. Her student loan payments were due every month, and she had no savings to fall back on if she lost her job. The thought of moving back in with her parents, or worse, defaulting on her loans, filled her with anxiety. She started applying to other hospitals in the area, but the nursing job market was tight. Most facilities were facing similar budget pressures, and experienced nurses were competing for the same positions that new graduates like Lily were seeking. Her roommate Jessica noticed the change in her mood. "You're not sleeping," she observed one morning when Lily came home from her shift looking exhausted and defeated. "I can't stop thinking about what will happen if I lose this job," Lily admitted. "I know I haven't been there long, but I love working at Valley Medical. The patients, the other nurses, even the crazy schedule. It all feels right, you know? But loving something doesn't pay the bills." "Have you considered looking for work outside of nursing?" Jessica asked gently. The question hit Lily harder than she expected. "I spent 4 years in school to become a nurse. I have tens of thousands of dollars in student debt for my nursing degree. But more than that, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to help people when they're scared and sick and vulnerable." Despite her fears about job sec, Lily continued to go above and beyond for her patients. If anything, The threat of layoffs made her more determined to prove her value to the hospital. She volunteered for extra shifts, took on difficult patients that other nurses preferred to avoid, and maintained her reputation for exceptional compassion. During one memorable week, she cared for the Rodriguez family again, when their youngest son was admitted with a severe allergic reaction. She spent her own money to buy coloring books and crayons to keep the boy entertained during his recovery. When the family tried to pay her back, she refused, saying it was part of the hospital's patient comfort program. These gestures didn't go unnoticed by patients and their families, but Lily wondered if the hospital administration cared more about budget numbers than patient satisfaction scores. Then, on a gray Thursday morning in April, Lily's worst fears seemed to be confirmed. After finishing her night shift, she was changing out of her scrubs in the locker room when Karen, her supervisor, approached her with a serious expression. "Lily, I need you to stop by the administrative office before you leave today," Karen said. "Mr. Williams wants to see you." Lily's heart sank. Robert Williams was the hospital's chief administrator, a man she had seen only a few times in the hallways but never spoken to directly. Nurses at her level didn't usually have meetings with the chief administrator unless something was seriously wrong. "What does he want to see me about?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Karen's expression was unreadable. "He didn't give me details. Just said it was important and that you should come to his office as soon as possible." Lily finished changing clothes with shaking hands. This had to be about the layoffs. They were probably going to let her go today. She thought about all the patients she had connected with over the past year, all the families she had helped during their most difficult moments. She thought about Mrs. Thompson and Mr. Patterson and little Maya, and all the others who had thanked her for her kindness. As she walked through the hospital corridors toward the administrative wing, Lily tried to prepare herself for the conversation ahead. She would be professional and gracious even if her heart was breaking. Maybe she could ask for a letter of recommendation. Maybe there would be opportunities at other hospitals. The administrative office was in a part of the building she rarely visited. The carpeting was newer here, the lighting softer, the furniture more expensive looking than what she was used to in the patient care areas. Everything about the environment felt formal and intimidating. She approached the receptionist's desk, her mouth dry with nervousness. "I'm Lily Chen," she said quietly. "Mr. Williams asked to see me." The receptionist smiled and gestured toward a hallway. "His office is the last door on the right. He's expecting you." As Lily walked down the hallway, she had no idea that her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. Lily's hand trembled slightly as she knocked on the heavy wooden door marked Chief Administrator. Her mind raced with thoughts of unemployment, student loans, and having to start over somewhere else. She had rehearsed what she might say, how she could ask for more time or plead her case, but her throat felt tight with anxiety. "Come in," called a voice from inside. She pushed open the door and stepped into a spacious office with large windows overlooking the hospital parking lot. Mr. Williams, a middle-aged man in a dark suit, sat behind an impressive oak desk covered with papers and files. But he wasn't alone. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Sitting in one of the leather chairs across from the administrator was a familiar figure, the elderly man from the waiting room, the one she had covered with her cardigan months ago. But he looked completely different now. Gone were the worn clothes and tired appearance. Instead, he wore an expensive-looking navy suit, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie. His silver hair was neatly styled, and his posture was confident and alert. But it was definitely the same man. She recognized his gentle eyes and the small scar near his left temple. "Please sit down," Mr. Williams said, gesturing to the remaining chair. "Lily, I'd like you to meet Robert Chen." The elderly man smiled warmly at her, and Lily felt completely confused. Why was this man here? Had he complained about something? She couldn't remember doing anything wrong during their brief encounter. "Hello again," Mr. Chen said softly. "I believe we've met before, though under very different circumstances." Lily sat down carefully, her mind spinning with questions. Yes, I think so. You were in the emergency waiting room a few months ago. You were sleeping and it was cold, so She trailed off, unsure why she was explaining this to the hospital administrator. "So you gave me your cardigan," Mr. Chen finished. "One of the kindest gestures anyone has shown me in years." Mr. Williams leaned forward in his chair. "Lily, Mr. Chen is the CEO and founder of Chen Industries. His company is one of our largest benefactors and has donated millions of dollars to this hospital over the past decade. Lily felt the room spin slightly. CEO? The homeless-looking man she had covered with her grandmother's cardigan was a wealthy businessman? She tried to process this information while both men watched her reaction. I don't understand, she said quietly. That night you looked like you might be homeless. Your clothes were old and you seemed so tired and alone. Mr. Chen nodded, his expression becoming more serious. That's exactly how I felt that night. You see, I had been at this hospital for nearly 18 hours. My grandson David had been in a terrible car accident. He's my daughter's only child, and at the time, we weren't sure if he was going to survive. Lily's confusion began to clear as she listened. Mr. Chen continued, I had rushed here straight from a business dinner when I got the call. I was wearing an old sweater I keep in my car for emergencies, and frankly, I didn't care how I looked. My grandson was fighting for his life. The doctors had been working on him all day, Mr. Chen went on. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, hadn't even thought about changing clothes. My daughter was falling apart. My son-in-law was pacing the halls, and I felt completely helpless. I'm used to being able to fix problems, to find solutions, but there was nothing I could do except wait. Lily found herself leaning forward, drawn into his story. She could picture that night clearly now. The empty waiting room, the malfunctioning heating system, the exhausted old man curled up in an uncomfortable chair. Around 2 a.m, exhaustion finally caught up with me. I found a corner in the waiting area and tried to rest, but the air conditioning was making it so cold. I was shivering but too tired to move. And then, he paused, looking directly at Lily. Then this young nurse appeared like an angel. She didn't ask questions, didn't wake me up to check if I belonged there. She simply saw someone who was cold and uncomfortable, and she did something about it. Mr. Williams was taking notes as Mr. Chen spoke, but Lily barely noticed. She was remembering that night from her own perspective, how peaceful the man had looked when she covered him, how natural it had felt to help him. When I woke up a few hours later, Mr. Chen continued, I was warm and comfortable for the first time all night. The security guard told me that a nurse had given me her sweater. I wanted to thank her, but she was busy with an emergency, so I folded the cardigan carefully and asked the security guard to return it with my gratitude. But that wasn't the end of it, Mr. Chen said, his voice becoming more animated. I was curious about the nurse who had shown such kindness to a complete stranger. So I started asking questions, quietly, discreetly. What I learned over the following weeks amazed me. He turned to face Lily more directly. Did you know that Mrs. Patterson still talks about the nurse who stayed extra hours to read to her daughter? Or that the Rodriguez family specifically asks for you whenever they need to bring one of their children to the hospital? The security guards told me about the homeless veteran you helped connect with social services. The cafeteria staff mentioned that you sometimes buy extra food for patients who can't afford meals. Lily felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Those weren't big things, she said quietly. Anyone would have done the same. No, Mr. Chen said firmly. Anyone would not have done the same. I've been visiting hospitals for years, both as a patient and as a board member at various medical facilities. I've seen how most people interact with patients and families. What you do is exceptional. Mr. Williams cleared his throat. Mr. Chen has been conducting an informal review of our patient care quality. He's been particularly interested in identifying staff members who go above and beyond their job requirements. Why? Lily asked, still confused about why she was in this meeting. Mr. Chen smiled. Because exceptional compassion is rare in healthcare today. The system has become so focused on efficiency and cost-cutting that we've lost sight of what really matters. Treating people with dignity and kindness when they're at their most vulnerable. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where Lily's old car sat among the newer vehicles belonging to doctors and administrators. My grandson recovered, by the way, he said over his shoulder. He's back in college now, playing soccer again. But I'll never forget how scared and helpless I felt that night, or how much it meant when someone showed me simple human kindness. Mr. Chen turned back to fake. Her. I've been working with Mr. Williams to develop a new initiative at this hospital. We want to create a program focused on compassionate patient care, something that prioritizes the human connection between medical staff and the people they serve. Lily listened, but she still couldn't understand why they were telling her all this. Was this related to the layoffs? Were they explaining the hospital's new priorities before letting her go? We need someone to lead this initiative, Mr. Chen continued. Someone who understands that medical care is about more than just treating symptoms and following procedures. Someone who sees patients as whole human beings deserving of respect and kindness. He paused, and both men looked at her expectantly. We'd like to offer you that position. Lily stared at him, certain she had misheard. I'm sorry, what? We want you to become the director of compassionate care at Valley Medical Center. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Lily felt like she was in a dream, unable to process what she was hearing. Just an hour ago she had been terrified of losing her job. Now they were offering her a promotion she had never even imagined possible. Lily sat frozen in her chair, staring at the two men who had just turned her world upside down. The words Director of Compassionate Care echoed in her mind, but they seemed impossible to believe. Just hours ago she had been worried about getting fired, and now they were offering her a leadership position she had never dreamed of. I think there's been some mistake, she finally managed to say. I've only been working here for less than a year. I'm still one of the newest nurses on staff. I don't have any management experience or advanced degrees. Mr. Chen sat back down, leaning forward with genuine enthusiasm. That's exactly why you're perfect for this role. You haven't been in the system long enough to become cynical or burned out. You still see patients as individuals, not just medical cases to be processed efficiently. Mr. Williams opened a folder on his desk. Let me explain what this position would involve. You'd be responsible for developing and implementing programs that improve the overall patient experience at Valley Medical Center. This would include training other staff members in compassionate care techniques, creating support systems for patients and families, and working with different departments to ensure that kindness and respect are priorities throughout the hospital. Lily felt overwhelmed. That sounds like an enormous responsibility. Are you sure I'm qualified for something like that? You're more qualified than you realize, Mr. Chen replied. Over the past few months, I've spoken with dozens of patients and families about their experiences here. Your name comes up constantly. People remember you, not just as a competent nurse, but as someone who made them feel cared for during some of the worst moments of their lives. He pulled out a small notebook from his jacket pocket. Mrs. Henderson told me that when her 5-year-old son was scared before his surgery, you sat with him for an hour telling stories about brave knights and dragons. The Thompson family said you helped them navigate insurance, paperwork when they couldn't afford their medical bills. Mr. Davis mentioned that you brought him books from the library because he was bored during his long recovery. Lily listened in amazement, as Mr. Chen recounted story after story of her interactions with patients. Many of these moments she had forgotten about. They had seemed like such small, natural responses to people in need. But what about my current job? She asked. What about the other nurses who might lose their positions? I heard there were going to be layoffs. Mr. Williams smiled for the first time since she had entered the office. Actually, this new program will require us to hire additional staff, not reduce our workforce. Mr. Chen's company is funding a significant expansion of our patient care services. We'll need more nurses, more support staff, and better training programs for everyone. The relief that washed over Lily was almost as overwhelming as the surprise of the job offer. Not only was she not getting fired, but other people's jobs would be saved too. Mr. Chen continued explaining the details. The salary for this position would be significantly higher than what you're making now as a floor nurse. We're talking about a starting salary that's nearly 3 times your current pay, plus benefits and opportunities for professional development. Lily felt dizzy. 3 times her current salary would mean she could pay off her student loans years ahead of schedule. She could afford a decent apartment without roommates. She could even help her parents, who had struggled financially to support her through nursing school. There's one more thing, Mr. Chen said, reaching into his briefcase. I'd like to establish a scholarship fund in your name for nursing students who demonstrate exceptional compassion and dedication. Too many talented young people avoid nursing because of the financial burden. This scholarship would help students like you pursue their calling without drowning in debt. Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes. A scholarship in her name? It seemed impossible that her small act of kindness on that cold night had led to this moment. Why? She asked softly. Why would you do all this? The job, the scholarship, everything? Mr. Chen's expression became very serious. Because compassion is becoming rare in our world, especially in healthcare. Hospitals are businesses now, focused on profits and efficiency. Patients are treated like numbers on a spreadsheet instead of human beings facing some of the most frightening experiences of their lives. He stood up again, pacing slightly as he spoke. My grandson's accident taught me something important. When someone you love is fighting for their life, you don't care about the hospital's profit margins or operating efficiency. You care about whether the people taking care of them see them as a person worth saving, worth comforting, worth treating with dignity. That night in the waiting room, I was just a scared old man whose family was falling apart. You didn't know who I was or whether I had insurance or if I could pay for anything. You just saw someone who was cold and uncomfortable and you did something about it. That's the kind of healthcare we need more of. Lily wiped her eyes, still struggling to process everything. What would happen to my current patients? There are people who specifically ask for me when they come to the hospital. You wouldn't lose contact with patient care, Mr. Williams assured her. Part of your new role would involve working directly with patients and families, especially in difficult cases. You'd also be training other nurses to provide the same level of compassionate care that you've been giving. Think about it, Mr. Chen added. Instead of helping one patient at a time during your shifts, you could help create a system where every patient receives that level of care. Your kindness could multiply and reach thousands of people. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. Lily had never seen herself as a leader or administrator. She was just someone who cared about people and tried to help when she could. I need some time to think about this, she said quietly. Of course, Mr. Chen replied. This is a big decision, but I hope you'll seriously consider it. Healthcare needs people like you in leadership positions. As Lily left the administrative office an hour later, her mind was spinning with possibilities. She walked through the familiar hospital corridors, but everything looked different now. The nurse's station where she had spent countless hours, the supply closets where she had restocked medications, the patient rooms where she had held hands and listened to fears. It could all be the foundation for something bigger. That evening, she called her parents to share the incredible news. Her mother cried with joy, not just about the money but about the recognition of her daughter's character. Her father, a practical man who had worried about Lily's student debt for years, was amazed that kindness could literally pay off in such an unexpected way. 3 weeks later, Lily accepted the position. Her first initiative was to create comfort kits for families spending long hours at the hospital, care packages that included blankets, snacks, phone chargers, and information about local resources. Her second project was establishing a program where staff members were recognized and rewarded for going above and beyond in their patient interactions. The scholarship fund that Mr. Chen established in her name helped 15 nursing students in its first year. Each recipient was required to write an essay about compassion in healthcare and commit to volunteering in underserved communities. As Lily settled into her new role, she often thought about that cold night when she had given her cardigan to a stranger. She had never imagined that such a simple gesture could change not just her own life, but potentially improve the experiences of thousands of patients and their families. The hospital became a model for compassionate care, attracting visitors from other medical facilities around the country. But for Lily, the most rewarding moments were still the simple ones. Seeing a nurse take extra time to comfort a scared child, or watching a family's faces light up when they felt truly cared for during their darkest hours. Sometimes, she realized the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest waves of change.